Hello, hello. This is the kubeadm office hour. Today is October 23rd, and this meeting is ruled by the CNCF Code of Conduct, so please behave. And let's start with the agenda. So I'm going to share my desktop, the agenda. So please add your name to the agenda. Are there some new participants today? No, as far as I can see. Okay, so I have two PSA about two issues. The first one is a PR Lubomir is working on. We discussed this briefly last week. So quick recap for team and for the other that missed the last week meeting. We are trying to manage properly the init sequence that, and in particular to make kubelet configurations same as the configuration of the other nodes. And that basically boils up to fix up the kubelet.conf file in order to use the same certificate that kubelet is going to rotate. And we made a couple of PR trying an approach, but it didn't work. So last week we decided to add a new phase at the end of the kubeadm sequence, and this phase is going to basically fix up the kubelet.conf file in order to make the rotation, the certificate rotation possible also on the first control plane node. And we are creating a new phase with one phase for kubelet rotation, and also there will be another phase for the another issue which is pending, that is whitelisting pod labels. The pending question here is how to call this phase. Lubomir proposal was kubelet ready and rotate with a sub phase called rotate client serve. I don't have a strong opinion. I made a counter proposal saying that we should be more consistent to the other. So since we have a kubelet start, we can call this kubelet some verb. I propose complete, but up to other. And also I propose to use a nouns for the subphase, because all the subphases are nouns. So if you have opinion, please talk now or comment on the issue.
I kind of like the notion of finalize, because that's consistent. It's analogous to complete, but it's consistent with the rest of Kubernetes.
Okay, so we are going with, I like it.
I think, yeah, I think it would mean the same as in the concept of a finalizer. Finalize makes a lot of sense.
Okay. So let's make it more clear for Lubomir. We discuss. Let's go for kubelet finalize. Okay. Next up. Okay, there is an issue, and this issue is tricky because The user is reporting that check expiration is not working, and it is reporting that check expiration is not working in two cases. One is a Kubernetes node with an external etcd, and this is a bug, and we agreed that I agreed with Lubomir that this should be fixed. The second case where check expiration is failing is basically the nodes where the user installed a TCD. So they are not Kubernetes node, but they are a TCD node created with kubeadm phases. Creating a TCD nodes with kubeadm is something that we described in a document, but it's something that we never fully supported. So the point here is that if we have to try to fix check expiration also for this use case, I'm -1.
One question, did we ever state that we supported external etcds?
We definitely support it, but the management of certificates that are stood out outside of the scope of Kubernetes, outside of the standard operating parameters, is very thorny. And I think the first one, yes. The second, I'm in agreement with Fabrizio. First one, yes. Second one, no. Because it's too. I don't know how you do it. The second one without you.
Yeah, because the user use kubeadm phases to create a TCD, but basically it pass a bunch of flags, and we don't have and the paths, and kubeadm does not have any notion of this path for doing the certificate renewal. So it is really, I agree, there is no way to do this. Okay, I will comment on the issue later. And let's move to the next one, which is Tim.
So I wanted to have a more in-depth discussion with this group about importing of kubeadm types and the issues that people had run into with cluster API, and potentially try to solve, like enumerate those issues and potentially try to solve some of them for V1 beta 3. I'm generally concerned when downstream, if people cannot easily vendor the types that you would expect to be composable, right? I do know that there are some transitive depth issues that exist, and we've been slowly kind of piecing or tearing them apart. So as we switch to V1 beta 3, I really want to know what are the concrete set of problems we are facing with people trying to import them, and how can we go about mitigating those problems?
You want me to chime in, Tim?
Sure.
So I know that when we were working on Cluster API Alpha 2, pulling in the kubeadm types, we ended up having to copy them into our code because we needed to be able to leave certain fields empty or omit them, which I believe was acceptable because kubeadm, I think, was defaulting them, but we weren't able to get that. I think, if I remember correctly, the types themselves required values to be filled in, and we couldn't even we couldn't submit our object to the API server and have it pass validation because the stuff wasn't getting defaulted the way that we needed it to. And so we ended up copying the types and adding some omit empties where it helped us out. And I believe that Chuck made some pull requests or opened some issues about that. I think that was how it went. So some combination of too strict validation or not getting the defaulting that we needed, or both. I can get the full details if that's not correct, but I think that's what it is. And then the second issue is really around just multiple API versions, and the fact that there is V1 beta 1, V1 beta 2, and so on. And like from an end user's perspective of somebody trying to configure kubeadm through cluster API, I don't know that they really want to care that it's V1 beta whatever. And so if we supported multiple API versions of the kubeadm types, the question that I posed to Tim the other day was, what does this look like in a cluster API object? Because we need to be able to specify an init configuration, for example. So do I have a field called v1 beta 1 init that is the v1 beta 1 type? Do I have a second field which is v1 beta 2 init that's got the v1 beta 2 package? Do I do it as a unstructured data and do my best to allow the user to put in whatever they want, which basically means I can't use open API validation? It's just kind of a mess when there's multiple pre-release versions. I would imagine that once it gets to V1, that V1 would probably be supported for a long time and people could rely on that and not have to worry about different V1s. But certainly once you get to starting the cycle again with V2 alpha 1 and beta 1 and whatnot, you end up in the same place.
So the first one, Ross, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe we talked about it and we planned to update the omit empty list from the issues that Chuck had filed. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm already preparing a patch for that and probably will submit it as part of the first PR for V1 beta 3.
With regards,
and also I add that we are also fixing the lack of object meta, and so it will be also possible to apply, to use customize.
Yes, although like my experimentation at the moment showed that meta v1 object meta is not easily consumable for reasons that are basically mostly the same as for the cluster API. So I'm going with a stripped down version, which is consisting currently only of the name field.
well, object meta contains a bunch of other stuff besides, like the resource version and object meta and a bunch of.
Yeah, but no, this is one used as a nested field, not as at the top level.
Okay.
There was some issue with CRDs, structural schemas, open API validation, the stuff that KubeBuilder generates, that if you try to have a widget that has its normal object meta at the top, but then you have somewhere in your object graph or in your fields another object meta, KubeBuilder doesn't like it.
So I think we have solutions for, so far we've enumerated 3 things then actually, so in the doc. The first one is being worked on for V1 beta 3. The third one, the object meta one, is being addressed. The second one, the multiple API versions and embedding types with inside of the larger other types. I don't exactly know how we want to handle that. I'd have to think how Kubernetes does it today, because we do that all over Kubernetes, and whether or not, but it's only on core V1 types.
Well, and yeah, so the fact that it's most of those are at V1, you don't have this flip-flop or multi-version issue, and mean, any place else that is using a deployment or something from kubeadm is going to use a specific API version and not multiple. And if needed, you there would be conversions either done automatically, or you as a user would be instructed, well, if you've got an older thing, you need to convert it to the new one before we'll take it.
So if I were super old school and I just ignore API machinery for what it is today, like just ignore it, just say it doesn't exist, I would create a discriminated union of a type, which would have both types embedded inside of it. And I would call it, it's like an envelope letter idiom. It would be called kubeadm types or kubeadm config, which would contain the multiple versions of v1 beta 1 and v1 beta 2. And I would use that inside of my API. So like you see this all over Linux code. Like Linux code will have a discriminated union, which would have multiple versions of a given thing. You see this in sockets code in particular, like all over sockets code you see it, where the multiple objects will be passed through a single object. That's one pattern. I have not seen it done in API machinery, but I think that's a pattern that we might be able to prototype.
I don't think that would be difficult. I don't even know that you need to prototype it. I mean, we can just say it'll work. But those examples from Linux kernel sockets, whatnot, I don't believe those, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think those were like multi-version, was it?
They're multi-type through one discriminated union. So
right, which is different. I mean, it's the same, like, it's the same net result. You can do it, but when you have a union of multiple types where only one of them is present, those types generally are different. With what you're proposing, it's always going to be a kubeadm config, but it might be, you know, the underlying actual bits might be beta 1, beta 2, or beta 3.
Mm-hmm.
So we can do it, and it would work just fine. It's just as an end user, if I had that hat, I generally don't. I'm generally just down in the weeds developing, but like I'm not going to care if it's beta 1, beta 2, or beta 3. I just want it to work. But unfortunately, you have to know. Maybe
we should expose that generic type so that people that are consuming it don't need to care. So like as part of our types file that we generate, we have the specific versions there, and we have the generic wrapper that allows people to consume it. I think the onus is not necessarily on you, but might be on us, right? So, or there might be on kubeadm. It's like the distinctions between us and whatever. The onus might be on kubeadm types to have that wrapper object for general consumption because it might be generally useful.
But you still, as a consumer, you still have to say type equals v1 beta 3 or whatever, and then fill out the appropriate field in that struct.
You will, and then pass it through. It's just that your consumption model for your types inside of your API, the consumer's API, doesn't need to be specific. It's only on the end. It's only on the initial creation. Do you have to have specific version?
Are you saying that this wrapper type would have helper functions to get all the individual get and set? Well, maybe not set, but at least get. So from a consumption standpoint, once you've filled in that it's a v1 beta 3 init config, if I say get some field, that would go to the right place, and I don't have to write in my code, check this version, then that version, then some other version.
That would be the ideal scenario. That's what I'm thinking in my head, but we don't have any of this yet.
I mean, we already have functions for these for the internal type. Like that's the purpose of the internal type. Yeah. Could we maybe quickly re-examine the assumptions as to why our internal types cannot be exported?
Well, so the internal type is never a versioned type. It's a point in time version, but doesn't have an API version associated with it. So it's the hub through which you would convert to beta 1, beta 2, beta 3, etc. But the reason that it's not exported is because it doesn't have a stability guarantee behind it.
Yes. But what would be the stability guarantee of getters and setters
I think it
on a
probably
moving
depends
type?
on yeah, it's a good question, because if you add a field in beta 3 that's not in beta 1, I don't know. I
And
can't.
when field names change, the getter functions will change, which means when somebody updates their dependency, they're going to have to change their code. So, I mean, we might as well just stick with the type, right?
Well, there's also another issue. If we make or export the internal types, we might not be able to refactor them or touch them anymore, as they will be consumed by external users.
The point of the internal type, though, right, is to allow for use of multiple external versions, right, in a way that makes the code possible to manage.
But from the perspective of the target component. So in the case of kubeadm's internal types, it's kubeadm.
Mm-hmm. But if I want to author a component that uses kubeadm types, like we are talking about, it's not incredibly useful to author that component on a single external type.
So I propose the following, because like what I want to do is get a list of key detractors. Instead of us trying to bike shed, I can open an issue and hopefully Andy can give me the concrete example that which was the configuration through the control plane, I think, or it was part of the bootstrap config.
I have a comment here that probably a good approach to this is that from the cluster API perspective, not all the detail of the kubeadmin API are relevant, but only few of them. So, for instance, it is cluster API. It is interested in understanding if there is a token, or if the join configuration is for joining a cluster node or a worker node. So maybe that we can abstract those needs into an interface and make this interface work with different version of the API. And so we are giving to cluster API an interface that can be more stable across versions. And behind the scene, basically it doesn't matter which format the user is providing.
So I think that what we are cluster API folks are actually facing is basically what we are facing in kubeadm with respect to the component configs.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this is basically the same thing, and we should probably
Yes.
either go with the things that were discussed in the workgroup component standard meeting like several months ago, or probably schedule a new such meeting with more folks from SIG API machinery.
Yes. Currently in kubeadmin, we are moving away from the detail of the component config. And I think that this is why I was suggesting also for cluster API to moving away from the detail of each single version, and instead build something that focus on the few information that cluster API needs to know.
Well, we do need to be able to specify things like the flags or component config when it comes around for the controller manager and the kubelet and the API server and whatnot. So I don't think trying to restrict what people are able to set in the init cluster and join configs right now is something we should really look to do. But if I'd be interested to learn where component config is going and if that would make things easier.
Yeah, agreed. Just to clarify, I was not suggesting to redefine a new API, but I was suggesting to define something that takes in input any version of the kubeadm API and returns basically the few flags that cluster API is interested on in a version agnostic way.
So just putting them on the kubeadm config spec, for example, and then having the reconciler copy them into the right places.
Yes, something similar, but we can discuss on the issue as Tim is suggesting.
Yeah, I think instead of continuing on bike shed approaches, we can open an issue and try and get resolution on it. I consider this to be pretty high priority. I do not want to see weird type proliferation and separate conversion utilities all over the place. I don't think that's in the best interest of cluster API. I don't think it's the best interest of kubeadm. I think it's better to try and solve this problem, which is generally hard, and try to figure out a path forward so that way they can have a cleaner consumption model. Right. We can probably move on to the next stuff.
Okay, next up is Marek and upgrade phases.
Yeah, so I made this doc with the upgrade phases, and I thought we could vote during office hours today if everybody likes those phase names and phases. Everything in purple is actually a phase. Everything else is just details as to what's in that phase.
So a brief comment, because we worked together in refining the document. The idea is to hide all the detail where it's possible to keep things at eye level. So the first phase will be per flight. And yeah, before the phase, there will be the prompt, but this is out of the phases, let me say. Then we have per flight, as usual. Then we have a unique phase that manages all the upgrade for all the components, for the control plane components and the TCD. And we are keeping this as a unique phase for many reasons. One of these reasons is that it will be much more easy to manage a rollback in case of errors. Then we are grouping all the post-upgrade phases, or all the post-upgrade steps, like upload configuration, write down the new kubelet config file, and reapply airbag rules. We are grouping everything in another phase without any subphases. And finally, we are keeping add-ons as a separate phases with two subphases, so the user can skip kubeproxy or core DNS. Whoa, what happened? Comments?
I'm +1 on keeping the add-on phase separate, since we got some requests for being able to skip kubeproxy.
Other opinions?
Fabrizio, can you please show the contents of the post-upgrade phase?
Yes. So I'm showing it now.
I mean, like, show me the code, because...
Okay. So let's try. So here we have a unique function, which is post-upgrade, that does a bunch of things: upload a configuration, He create the config map for the new kubelet component config. So the kubelet minus version config map. It writes the kubelet configuration and upgrades the local kubelet to use the new version of the configuration, annotate the nodes. So it updates the annotation of the node. He recreate all the RBAC rules. And then at the end, it makes add-ons. So our proposal is to keep basically all those lines in a unique phase, because we don't see a reason for the user to call them individually, while we are breaking this down into two phases. Is that right, Marek?
Yeah, what you have highlighted is going to be a phase that has two phases. And then everything else above it is going to be the post-upgrade stuff.
I was wondering whether we have users that skip the bootstrap token phase during init, which means that the upgrade is going to force these rules on them.
I have not heard of people doing that. You could.
I know of someone in VMware that was doing that.
Was it George?
Yes.
Shaking my fists.
To be on the safe side, in my opinion, it's probably best to expose these subphases. And if people don't care about them, they can just call O and always execute them.
So basically, it will be fine to have upload a config, kubelet, and this RBAC, which is basically the bootstrap token.
I'm +1 on breaking them into subphases.
Okay. We should make sure that the name match the one in init, so the user. Okay. Other comments? Great. Thank you, Marek, for doing this work.
No problem. Thanks for your guys' help.
Next up, again, Marek.
Yeah, so I looked into this and wanted to know your guys' thoughts, because basically it's just adding retries, but I think that Lubomir made an excellent point that you can do the pre-pool and distribute it, or you can pre-pool and host your own images. I'm not sure if we actually want to add. So at first, I really like the idea because it just provides a better user interface. You know, if it doesn't just fail because of a hiccup in the network. But then I'm not sure if we really want to add all the complexity to this. So I wanted your guys' thoughts. I kind of am now awash on whether we do it or not. My opinion.
Well, I think we're already doing it in some places of the code. So at least for the sake of consistency for the user experience, we might have some replies.
We retry pulling images. I didn't find those, but I
wasn't talking about. I was talking more about. Let me recall. Maybe getting the config map for the init.
Even inside of the client code, for anything that talks to the Kubernetes cluster has a set of exponential decay backoffs that eventually time out. So those having that behavior be consistent seems rational. I do think that it would, you can hide it behind, there's utility functions that do this. I forgot what they're called. They're in the utils, but you can have that capability.
Then I'm +1 to adding a retry. We have it, as Yasin was saying, we have it already in several points, and in all cases they are retry added to avoid a problem for the users, even not strictly necessary. So I don't see a huge pushback to this one. So I'm okay.
Okay, I'll add it.
I
I'll
believe
look
the
for those
utility,
utilities.
I believe they're called run until. It's been a long time, but I believe that's what they're called, run.until.
Okay, I'll look for them. Thank you for pointing me in the direction of those.
Okay.
No, sorry, I wanted to mention that the check is reporting these issues on AWS clusters. And I think these test scenarios have connectivity issues. Like the image pool failure is one of them. And another one that I saw is that check's contact found that kubeadm init is blocking indefinitely, which to me only makes sense if we are not handling some sort of an error with the REST client that checks if the API server is healthy, which is super weird. But I wanted more logs.
Didn't we discuss something like that? I remember there was a PR that was opened a while ago that checks against mirror code. Is it related to this or?
Checks what? Sorry.
It was a PR. I can't find it, but it was a PR that was opened and reviewed by Ross and me that checks against an HTTP code. I don't recall if it's still open or not.
I have not seen this PR, or at least I don't remember it.
I can't recall it either.
I'll try to find it and link it.
But
yeah, the issue is in also in the kubeadm tracker, also reported by check.
So, but by the way, I'm going for the issue. I agree in what Lubomir is saying, that we should recommend that the user pre-pull images, and this is a good recommendation for the user. Maybe we write this in the website. In case there are potential problem, network problem, it is better to pre-pull images before running kubeadm init. There is also a command to help for this. And in case of cloud provider, images can be preloaded in the template of the image. So there are many ways to do this. And so, but nevertheless, I don't see problem in adding the retry. Check. What is? I don't find the issue, Lubomir.
Is the second one in the list. This is about the infinite hang. We haven't done issue triage for a while, by the way.
We have 10 minutes. We can do this. Okay. They were logging. It started, but then hung forever on the personal issue. They were. Okay, so if there are no more points, I think we are done. We can move to do a issue backlog triage, if everyone agree. So, Lubomir, how do you suggest to propose? We go in order from.
I would open the 117 milestone, because what I'm doing nowadays is just put everything in the milestone, which means that it needs triage. And if you think that it's not appropriate for 117, it's the time to start moving things to the next milestone. The
Okay.
milestone 118 already exists. Also, we have next.
Okay, there are 60, 57 in this milestone. So this one we just saw. I will keep it in the milestone, waiting if they provide some info. Okay, this one about the check expiration, I have to comment. I don't know if you were if you joined when we discussed the idea here is to fix the defect for kubeadm for checking expiration of kubeadm node with external etcd, but not support check expiration on the etcd node.
Yes.
Okay. And this is a bug, and it is in the milestone. So kubeadm phase with a client go error. What happened? Try to run kubeadm and got the following error. Client go informer factory.
This is the description under what happened is misleading. I already checked this. Basically, the users needs to provide more walks. I'm not sure he provided them.
Where I can find, try. I call kubeadm before it.
Yes, so I haven't looked at this. This is the full walk. Maybe someone can assign themselves to help look at the logs for the kubelet and try to see something out of order.
Okay, even if this is this is a really a strange error message.
Yeah, the error message says connection refused, right? So I'll try to have a look. I'll assign that to myself.
Thank you. Thank you, Rafael. So kubeadm join cluster issue. The old version, okay? Configuration failed due to not enough started members. I never saw this error in etcd.
Might be if they try to go from 1 to 3 all at once. So yeah, we need more feedback there.
Okay.
They have 3 endpoints for the etcd, so it is kind of odd.
Where do you see 3 endpoint? Update etcd endpoint?
.11, .12, and .13.
Okay, yeah, moving from 2 to 3. Needs is the label. Triage.
They skipped all of the steps that they followed. Like they just said I don't know. I kind of hate it when people kind of delete the template we have. Like, how do you recreate this?
Okay, let's leave triage need more information. And let's see. Oh. Okay, retry for Unity init. HA master join failure. etc server leader changed. Right, close. Okay. Environment. What happened? Trying to create the third node. RPC error.
I think this is concurrent join.
You already commented asking more info.
I asked the question if this is going to work if they join serially.
Okay. Let's wait for answer on this. So triage needs information. Really, we have this problem again?
Yes, this is also external HCD. I can summarize this. So basically, the user is doing config images pull, but they're not passing the config. So the request they have is to fetch the kubeadm cluster configuration from the config map and determine if the cluster is running external HCD. And but my objection to that is that this command can be used without the cluster even running yet. So
Yes.
it's a bit of a guessing game if the cluster is up or not. But it's really related to the issue with check expiration of etcd, which is external.
No, I don't think. I think that this is different. So if the user is calling a command without passing the parameters.
Yes, so it's already possible to pass -- config, from which already the pull command can determine if external etcd is used or not. But they want to pass only the version. And basically the user is proposing, hey, I want to fetch the config map. And our proposal to fix the bug where whether we should check expiration for etcd, it's similar because you propose there to fetch the config map of the.
Yeah.
So this is the same stuff. So we have to be consistent. Do we want to fetch config map for pool as well? In my opinion, we probably shouldn't because it's already possible to pass -- config. But then it's a question that should we pass -- config to the check expiration command, which is kind of weird.
Okay, let's table the discussion and we try to think offline. To be honest, I was thinking about the one about check expiration, because also check expiration is a command that should be capable to run without a working cluster, because it is your last ratio in case the cluster is busted for certificates. So basically, it is a chicken egg. If I ask the user, if I ask the command to access a cluster, I need certificates valid, and I cannot renew them. So probably we should discuss and have a common approach. I will assign myself, and then I will ping you to find a good compromise. Okay, config image pool. Annotate kubesystem namespace to allow kubeadmin to manage static pod labels.
I have the PR for this based on the Team All Clear KIP, but I would prefer that we don't merge my PR until the actual feature gate is added.
Okay.
They have to add the feature gate, and only then we should merge my PR.
And the feature gate will be enabled by default or not?
In 1.17, the feature is going to be alpha, and the feature gate is going to be off by default. In 1.19, they are going to enable it by default, and the feature is going to be beta.
Okay. Okay. So this PR we need, strictly speaking, we need this PR in 1.19.
Yes, we can skip.
Yes, but let's keep the PR is already there. Let's keep it.
I would like to test, once they add the feature gate, I would like to test my PR before
For sure. For
yeah.
sure. So I agree to keep it into the release. Make the host scoped configuration observable. Wow. Okay, remember this one was opened by David, and I think I already commented.
Basically, what Daniel wants here is if you enable, like, it's not official decision. We don't have one yet, but I think what we should do here is that for high verbosity levels, we should dump the COSA configuration, init configuration, whatever structures we just read from the user, and we default it. So simply dump these configurations to standard error using kwalk or something like that. Yeah.
To be honest, I'm not sure. This is the request because, as far as I understand, is what David is asking is asking for something similar to the /config at point that there is. I don't remember for which component, that gives you the current configuration.
Is it the kubelet?
I don't remember.
I have not seen this endpoint. I saw somebody mention this, but I don't think it exists.
I think that the kube proxy has one. It's the config z.
But then it becomes a question like kubeadm is not a service. You cannot host an endpoint. So
yeah, technically, I'm so, but the idea behind is to get away to being able to retrieve the configuration. I'm not sure that this will be easy for kubeadmin, especially now that we are going to a low customize, a low treat component config in a different way.
We can probably try and add some command line flag upon init and join to basically store the final thing that we actually came up with in a file somewhere.
I don't know. It can be. I agree with this is something that we can do. I agree that this is backlog priority. My proposal is to kick this off from the milestone.
I agree.
Unless there is someone that wants to work on this. We already have a huge queue of things to do. Lubomir, you agree to move to the next?
Yes. We just need to decide how to approach this.
I don't have a clear picture. This is why I'm moving. There is no one committed to figure out how to do this and doing this.
Just a reminder too that like this is a short cycle. So this is the shortest cycle of the year, and KubeCon is coming up too as well. So expect people to be out of pocket and busy. So
Okay. Next. Update min Docker CA version to more recent versions.
next, we just push that out of this milestone.
Okay, this is a tracking issue about what we have to do during the cycle. The next one is when 118 is created. So I don't know the date, but it's not yet the time. kubeadmin reset hangs. kubeadmin, I run kubeadmin. So I wanted to reset my system and run kubeadmin reset. Okay.
I can summarize this quickly. By the way, we are out of time. So Chuck is wants to reset his cluster. The reset hangs for 4 minutes, and I found out there is no way to actually. Can you go to the bottom of the discussion?
Yes.
My last comment. Yeah, this is basically there's a problem with the get options in API, in client Go, so we cannot do much here. And I believe this is pending a response from API machinery folks.
Okay. Who next? Agreed.
Yes.
So we are out of time. Thank you, everyone. I will publish the meeting as soon as possible. Bye-bye.
Bye.